Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So I basically feel like we may as well call this the Shaddoll Market Watch because honestly, I feel like everything we're going to be talking about is a result of the popularity of Shaddolls. As you all know, we just had the Shaddoll structure deck come out over the weekend, and it has caused huge price jumps all over the market. So for those of you who were hoping that Shaddolls would be a nice budget option for you to play, I hope you got all of your stuff ahead of time, because there is a ton of stuff that is really expensive right now that is gonna make finishing Shaddolls very, very difficult. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Okay, so first up, we're gonna take a look at the Invoked cards because that's where most of the bigger price jumps have been. I feel like everyone is looking at Shaddoll Invoked as the main variant that they're trying out with the Shaddoll engine, because the Invoked engine gives the Shaddoll deck really consistent access to a fusion spell, as well as a field spell that stops your opponent from responding to your fusion spells. Now that being said, literally like every single Invoked card has jumped up in price. So for Alistair the Invoker, just the main deck one, you're looking at $4 a piece for either the super or the secret rare, which is kind of insane because I remember considering them bulk not that long ago. Even more insane is the price of Invocation. So yeah, you're looking at like $100 for the ulti, and then $45 for the secret, the two higher rarities, but even the lowest rarity, you're looking at over $35 a piece. That is insane considering that the card has 3 printings, although at the same time, I guess it does sort of make sense because they were short printed, I believe. And finally, we have Alistair the Invoker of Madness sitting at $30, which is up from the $8 to $10 price point it was sitting at for quite some time. Now, Alistair the Invoker of Madness is actually a really key card in the deck now, as you can search additional copies of Invocation, allowing you to fusion summon more every turn. Now, if you're looking at buying into the Invoked cards, I personally believe that these are the cards that you should be prioritizing looking at first. So with main deck Alistair and Invocation, these cards were already reprinted, so they might not be at the top of Konami's reprint priority list, at least not compared to some of the other Invoked cards. And then with the Alistair link, Shadows in Valhalla was released about a year and a half ago, so while it does make sense for them to reprint it, there are actually other cards that would make a lot of sense for Konami to reprint first. Now, I would love to see all of the Invoked cards reprinted in a set like Dual Overload, since it would fall right before we get the new Invoked Fusion monster in Eternity Code as well. But yeah, despite how expensive these cards are, I would definitely prioritize grabbing these cards sooner rather than later if you're looking to play the Shaddoll Invoked deck, as they'll go up if they continue to see competitive success despite their already high price points, and just because they are less likely to see a reprint soon relative to some of the other cards that we're going to talk about next. Okay, next up we're looking at a few of the different Invoked Fusion monsters. So aside from Mechaba, none of the other Invoked Fusion monsters have ever actually been reprinted. So my concern when I look at what cards are going to be reprinted in 2020 is that Konami will use the spots in a set like Dual Overload and reprint the cards like Purgatrio, Raijin, and Kaliga, as they've never been reprinted before, and then not include cards like Alistair or Invocation. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there are only so many reprint spots available in a set, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, so these are the 3 main ones seeing play in Invoked variants right now. Purgatrio is a card that can win games, and it can be made with either Almirage, Ash, or against Salamangreat, and it's now like a $9 card. Raijin is one that has seen a lot of price fluctuations over the last while, as it can be summoned off of instant fusion as well, and it is a warrior, and it can be made with Drollin Lockbird or Rishadal Winda. It's currently like a $17 card. And then Kaliga is one that has kind of like flown under the radar, but I really like this card. It can potentially lock out certain decks from being able to play the game at all, and it is an $8 card. Now, whether or not these cards will actually see much play kind of depends, because extra deck space in the Shaddoll Invoked deck is extremely tight. If you want to play the deck, I would definitely consider holding on to one of each copy of these fusion monsters just in case, and then selling off your reprints. These cards did come out several years ago, so in my opinion, there's a very good chance that we're going to have to see these cards reprinted very, very soon. But yeah, definitely some great cards to dig out of your bulk if you can. Even cards like Elysium and then the Earth Invoked Fusion monster might be worth grabbing and selling while you can, because for now they're going to have a tiny bit of value that should make them a bit easier to move. Alright, so as for Shaddoll cards themselves, nothing is too crazy. Fortunately, we did basically see everything get reprinted in the structure deck itself, so no crazy price jumps because of a card being excluded. Now, of course, that is unless you want to bling out the deck and you want to play like your Alti Constructs or your Alti Shekinagas or something like that, but that's a separate thing. Anyways, guys, there are a couple of cards that are being bumped up in price for their play in Shaddolls as well. Now, Emergency Teleport is something that I've talked about before. I personally thought it was going to be moved to 2 or 3 on the ban list, but it's still at 1. Now, despite this, we are still seeing it spike in price for all variants. And the currently lowest price available for Emergency Teleport is around $7 a piece for the gold rare version, which isn't too horrible, I guess, but I do believe that with Invoked Shaddoll being the most popular variant, that particular build doesn't play Emergency Teleport, so you might just be better off selling your extra copies. Now, Cross Sheep is a card that has gotten a lot of attention recently. We all knew that it was going to be one of the best cards coming from Ignition Assault, and it kind of threw everyone off that it was just a rare. However, we should have known that $4 was just too low of a price point for this card, as it is a rare that absolutely everyone needs to play at least one copy of, I feel, and it was definitely short printed where people are opening entire boxes and not even getting a single copy of this card. If you don't have it yet, I think you actually just need to bite the bullet and buy one. It could absolutely get the Sunlight Wolf treatment and be reprinted as a super rare in the next OTS tournament pack. But if not, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see this card go up to around $20 a piece. And then finally, we have ultra rare damage jugglers. So this is absolutely the best light target to use in Shaddolls, as in the graveyard, after you fuse with it, it gives you access to Trick Clown, who can then theoretically be used for 2 more fusion or Xyz plays. So whereas I guess a lot of other people kind of wrote off Damage Juggler and the other Perform Mages as an engine that wasn't really useful or really going to perform anymore, I think a lot of people probably threw out their copies of Damage Juggler into the bulk, so this is definitely something that you're going to want to go through and pull out to sell for a few bucks. Alright, so let's briefly touch on Mech Knights here. So the Mech Knight engine hasn't done anything extremely notable. I believe that every now and then we do see the occasional top 8 deck utilize the Mech Knight engine. Now this engine consists of 2 key cards which are slightly more expensive than other cards from the archetype, those being Purple Nightfall and Blue Sky. Now Purple Nightfall was actually very recently bought out. It was hitting around $25 a piece at one point, but it has since then settled down to around $19 a piece. Blue Sky is actually still pretty steady at only around $8 a piece as well. Now this is actually an engine that I would recommend grabbing now while you can, if you can get them for relatively cheap, because I think it's going to be a fairly decent splashable engine moving forward. In fact, I think it gets a lot stronger when they get Mech Orcus Girsu, which can then search for Mech Knights when it's normal summoned. Aside from that, the only other thing I could potentially see as a catalyst for the sudden increase in price of Mech Knight Purple Nightfall is Team Samurai X1's video, where he showed off his Shaddoll deck list that actually used the Mech Knight engine as well, using them as an extra light engine to fuse with. I don't know how good that's necessarily going to be. I didn't see any like Shaddoll, Mech Knight, Invoked decks top over the past weekend, but it could definitely be something that's worth looking into. But yeah, whether or not you want to pick up this engine depends entirely on if you think that it'll get reprinted within Dual Overload or Battles of Legend this year. Alright, so aside from Shaddolls, one of the more notable performances from over the weekend was Rocket Dragon Link, which took first place at the Tulsa UDS tournament. I think that this top kind of came out of nowhere, as Rockets weren't really on anyone's radar before, except for Tomboxes apparently. Also, a lot of the cards from the Rocket archetype were all available in the structure deck, so there weren't too many huge notable price jumps. However, there were a couple of smaller notable ones. The first one is with Starliege Seifert, a secret rare from Chaos Impact with only 1 printing. So whereas before Seifert was around $20 to $23, it has jumped all the way up to around $30 a piece. Although I personally don't see it going too much higher moving forward unless it starts to see a crazy number of tops moving forward. If we do see a top, I could definitely see it hitting back around $40 to $45 a piece where it was before, but personally I'm not seeing that as being too likely. The other notable card is Striker Dragon, an ultra rare that's also from Chaos Impact that was actually short printed alongside IP Masquerena. The winning deck list actually played 3 copies of Striker Dragon, which is pretty cool, and because it was a short print, it was actually very susceptible to changes in price because there were fewer quantities on the market. It's now currently about $12 a piece for this card. While Rockets are certainly a cute deck, I don't know if the deck is going to see too much success, especially with a card like Nibiru running around this format. Personally, I'm not too worried about seeing a lot of tops from Rockets, so I'm inclined to suggest moving the card for now and waiting for it to settle back down to around $5 a piece. Alright guys, let's talk about a few different tech trends that have started to see some play recently. So Cypher Gear Gamma is a card that has seen a huge spike in popularity recently, probably being the most played hand trap over the last couple of weekends. It's probably the most versatile one, able to negate any activated monster effect, which is really cool because it can also stop other hand traps like Droll and Lockbird. Furthermore, against Appaloosa, you can burn multiple negates as the effect isn't once per turn, and the Gamma stays in your hand after being negated by Appaloosa. Finally, playing the Gamma means that you are playing 4 main deck light monsters, which can be fused away in the Shaddoll deck. Now, all of these factors combined have resulted in a huge price jump for Gamma, with the lower rarity supers shooting all the way up to $11 a piece. This is pretty big considering that they were only $3 to $4 a couple of weeks ago, and while I do hope that they are reprinted in Dual Overload or an OTS tournament pack, I don't think that's actually too likely, so you might have to just suck it up and buy them. Try to grab your sets for around $25 or so, hopefully because people know that the card is hyped up right now and they'll cut you a bit of a deal. Next up, because of Shaddolls, Retaliating Sea has seen a tiny bit of side deck play and a lot of hype as it stops the deck from generating any advantage from the monsters that it uses as fusion material. This is definitely a really interesting tech, and for me it brings back a lot of memories having played in the Duelist Alliance format before, but personally I don't think it's a very good card, as you can't really search anything relevant off of its effect later, and most of the time I think they're going to have Magical Meltdown on the field, preventing you from chaining Retaliating Sea at all. I think that for like a couple of minutes, the card actually did go up to around $10 a piece, but it has quickly settled back down as people realize it just isn't that great. I actually think it's another YouTuber like VCT RFS or Yugioh Paisano or whatever that tried to hype this card up before, but personally I don't think it's too relevant and should probably be sold off pretty soon. I think it's currently like around $4 a piece, so if you can get some value for that card you've been holding on to for a long time, go ahead and sell the card off now. Finally guys, not a huge price jump here, but I did want to draw people's attention to Artifact Sanctum, a trap card that has seen a lot of play over the weekend. Artifacts have become really popular as Scythe can shut off your opponent from playing for basically the entire turn, and Sanctum is generally the first card that people jump to because they need 3 of it when they're playing artifacts. It's currently like a $16 card, even though it does have 2 reprints. Personally, I think that if it continues to see this amount of play, it could definitely very easily go even higher to $20, maybe even $25 a piece. But of course, you have to be careful with reprint season right around the corner, because this is another card that could very easily be reprinted within a month or 2. Alright, so one card I want to touch on because I've seen a lot of people asking about it is No Material. So No Material is a hand trap that you can discard to target an opponent's face-up monster while you control no cards, and then stop your opponent from tributing it or using it as fusion, synchro, Ixies, or link material for one of those summons. Now I do understand why this card could be a very good card. Under the right circumstances, it can be absolutely game-changing. Having no cards on the field is also an easier condition to meet than no cards in the graveyard, so it's more likely to be live than Dimension Shifter. However, I think that the card's jump in price is a direct result of a video made by Nimnim, where he asked about why the card is only an $8 card, as opposed to being a card that is actually going to see any sort of meta or competitive relevance. It is, in theory, still a really cool card, don't get me wrong about that. However, I think that its effect conditions are far too restrictive to make it a top tier threat, and that too many other cards exist in the game that are just overall better and kind of outclass this card. Like, if I want to shut out my opponent completely, I think that cards like Dimensional Barrier or Nibiru are just like better, more versatile options that are harder to play around, so I would be more inclined to play those cards. I do think that the price jump of No Material up to $16 is definitely an overreaction by the market, and so I'd expect No Material to settle back down to around $10 to $12 within a couple of weeks, especially after we see the card not really perform at all over the next few events. Finally guys, last card I want to mention here is Lightning Storm. So if you guys haven't noticed, Lightning Storm has steadily gone up in price, going from around $100 on release to now being a $130 card. So it was actually around $110 for quite a while. However, I think that the results of the last UDS event really pushed its price over the top. From what I've seen, basically every single top UDS deck played 2 or 3 copies of Lightning Storm in the main or side deck. I think that this card is arguably the best card released into the game within the last couple of years, as it can single-handedly win entire games on its own out of nowhere. And on top of that, it's a card that you need to play multiple copies of. Now, this isn't to say that you have to play this card, right? You certainly can play cards like Twin Twisters or Heavy Storm Duster as back row removal instead. However, I think you have to look at Lightning Storm versus Twin Twister the same way that you look at Infinite Impermanence versus Effect Veiler. Sure, you can substitute one for the other, but as much as part of what you're getting is similar, it's just not the same. You're not getting the overall same effect. It doesn't have the same impact. And that tiny difference, well, maybe not tiny difference, but that difference can make a really big impact when you're playing at a high level event like that. So I think you need to play Lightning Storm if you expect to top or do really, really well at like a YCS level event. In my opinion, I think Lightning Storm is going to be the most expensive card we've seen in the game for quite a while. If it continues to be seen in every single top deck, I think that it'll keep going up, and especially with Nationals around the corner, I would expect it to go up even further. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at this point to see the card hit around $160 to $170 a piece within the next couple of months, and then eventually at Nats peaking at around $200 a piece. The card is just that good, as scary as it is to think about, and again, it is a card that you do need to play multiples of. Also remember that it just came out and it doesn't fall in this year's Megatin reprint pool, so don't expect it to be reprinted until at least early 2021. Alright guys, that is it from me for today. Hopefully you guys are all able to get your Invoked stuff for cheap, or you already have it, or even better, hopefully it all gets reprinted in Dual Overload. It's kind of funny, I actually found a small pile of Invoked stuff in a box. I brought it all to locals this weekend. I had a bunch of invocations and stuff. I actually ended up just giving it for really, really cheap to a few friends because they wanted to play the deck, and I don't mind because I barely even remembered that I had the stuff. So, oh well, it's fine if you're giving stuff to friends and whatnot. Anyways, guys, I do hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please leave me a thumbs up below if you did. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of the way the market has shaped up over the weekend. And of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest content from Tombox and myself. We'll be putting out a new episode on Wednesday morning. We just filmed it actually right before I filmed this video. So that was pretty fun. And yeah, so until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.